This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out.
Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. It's time for the GunGuyTV podcast.
Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support on GunGuyTV and everything that you do to support this podcast as well. I am extremely grateful. Now, on this podcast, I am going to talk about the election stuff, and I honestly wasn't going to, but I'm going to because the mainstream media, the mainstream Marxist media, as many people call it, is blocking every bit of news about Donald Trump's contesting the election and the reasons why he is. And since the mainstream news is blocking these things, those of us in the alternative media have to speak up, because if we don't, then nobody knows what's going on. Now, there are some places you can actually get regular news and find out what's happening there. I'll give you a couple of them right now. I would check out Newsmax and also OAN, One American News Network. You can also look at Breitbart and so on, although Breitbart can be somewhat hyperbolic sometimes, but it's a great website to find out things you're not going to find other places. And I got to tell you, I've stopped really looking at Fox News because Fox News is a mess and has kind of dived in the pool with the rest of them, pushing Joe Biden on us, even though Joe Biden has yet to win the election. We're going to talk more about that in the first half of the podcast. I do want to remind you that the podcast is broken into two sections. We have the first part, which is a half an hour long, roughly. Sometimes I go a little long. Forgive me, it's the Italian in me. I talk too much, I guess, but sometimes I'll go a little long with it. But roughly, it is about 30 minutes long, and that is available on your favorite podcast player. So you can find that all over the place. It's on iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean. I don't know, I can't think of all the rest of them, but just about every podcast player on the planet is where you're going to find the GunGuyTV Firearms podcast. So if you look it up, you'll find it. I have to confess to you, I'm not a techno whiz and I don't have a producer or whatever, so I'm not as good about making that easily found on those platforms as I would like to be. You'll have to actually search for it. It probably won't just come up in your feed, just so that you know. I've had people tell me, well, I don't see it available anywhere. Well, you'll have to search for GunGuyTV Firearms podcast. If you do that, it should come up without any problem. It certainly will come up on iHeart and Stitcher and some of the other ones that I mentioned. But you can also go to our website at GunGuy.tv and click on podcast, and it will give you a list of some of the easier ones to follow, and maybe you can find the one, maybe you've got the app already downloaded, and you can follow the podcast there. All right, let's talk about what's going on with the election, as far as I can tell, in this first part of the podcast. And then in the second part of the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about why politics are important locally. There's an old saying that all politics are local, and there's a reason for that. And we'll talk about that in the second half of the podcast, which is on Patreon only. Right now in the media, if you look in the mainstream media, you're going to find that everybody is trying to convince everybody else that Joe Biden is president-elect. Well, he's not. And that's the thing I think to remember, is the media, no matter how much they might like to crown themselves the authorities of the world, they do not in any way select the electors, and they do not in any way select who wins elections. It's the electors who elect presidents. The electors are in each individual state. So what happens is the people vote, that's the popular vote, and then based upon how they voted, the electors in each state then come together and they vote for president. Well, that hasn't happened. The media does not select the winner of the presidential election or any other election for that matter. They can talk about it all they want to. They can call the election, quote unquote, if they want to, but that doesn't mean anything. In fact, Joe Biden can stand up and say, I won all he wants to, or Donald Trump can stand up and say he won all he wants to, but that doesn't mean anything either. What means something is when the constitutional process ends, and that is that the votes are cast by the electors and the president is selected. And that won't happen for a while. And the reason that won't happen for a little bit is because the election is being contested. Now, where you've seen the media do this in the past, if you remember, or if you're old enough, is probably in the year 2000 when the election was going on between George W. Bush and Al Gore. We'll talk about that one in a minute, but it's happened previously in kind of a lesser way in 1948 when the Chicago Daily Tribune announced that Dewey had beat Truman in the presidential election. Well, the fact is, Dewey didn't beat Truman. There's never been a President Dewey. And indeed, Truman, you might have seen the famous photo where Truman held up that newspaper with that headline after it had been announced that he had won the presidential election. So this has happened before where the media has tried to usurp the election, has tried to decide what they want to decide and try to force a candidate down the throats of the American people and down the throats of this political system by virtue of the fact that they have a lot of power in the sense that they can produce a lot of information and dispel it everywhere. Now, at one time in 1948, the power rested with the newspapers. Back in the year 2000, it was the Washington Times with the headline, President Gore, Florida pushes Gore over the top. Well, there's never been a President Gore because Florida indeed didn't push Gore over the top. It was a contested election. It went on for a while in court. And at some point or other, and I will talk about the dates actually in just a minute, George Bush was made president, and rightfully so because he won the votes. Now, that was an instance where people said, well, yeah, but Gore won the popular vote, and President Bush didn't win the popular vote. He won the Electoral College, and that's wrong. It should have gone with the popular vote. Well, here's the problem with that. In the wisdom of our founders, they created a system whereby the President of the United States is selected based upon the Electoral College, not the popular vote. And the reason why they did that is because some states, like California, for example, or New York, these states, some of them are heavily populated. And some states don't have a very big population, like Rhode Island, for example, or Montana, for example. And by extension, then, if you just use the popular vote, then the states that have enormous populations are going to ramrod through whatever they want, and the states that don't have big populations are going to have no say at all. They're just going to have to suffer under the edicts of states like California. Well, that's not fair to all Americans, and it's not equal protection under the law. It's not equal representation. And so in their wisdom, the founding fathers came up with the idea of an electoral college so that each state has a number of electors and that those electors get to vote for a president. And that way, a state like Rhode Island or a state like Montana or a state like Wyoming that doesn't have as many people in it as a highly concentrated population like the state of California, they actually have a voice and they can contribute. I mean, you think about the Iowa caucus, right? You think about the New Hampshire and these other states that are so pivotal in the election for president, they wouldn't have a choice at all if it weren't for the Electoral College. The people running for president, the candidates, would never bother to go there. They'd never bother to spend any time in those states at all because those states would have no say if it was the popular vote alone. And that's why leftists want the popular vote, because guess where they live? Most of them live in the cities in these heavily populated states like California, New York, New Jersey, and so on the right and left coast, if you want to call it that. So obviously they want to get rid of the Electoral College because it removes any power that the middle section of the country might have. You know, the people in Kansas are not going to have any power anymore. And any place that these folks on the right and left coast would call flyover country would have no power anymore if we got rid of the Electoral College. And that's why we don't do that, and we don't want to do that. But the mainstream news talks about it all the time, and they'll let these leftists talk about it all the time because they don't want you to know. Now, we're going to talk more about what's happening currently in just a moment, but I've got to make sure that you're aware of one thing. Since there are so many brand new gun owners out there, I think it's important that they understand that defending yourself with a firearm is not the end of everything. It sometimes is just the beginning of defending yourself. In many states, if you defend yourself with a firearm, California being one, if you defend yourself with a firearm, you're likely to face possible criminal prosecution. Now, in some states, that's not the case. And even in California, it depends on when and where you do it. But each state's laws are different. Now, in addition to criminal prosecution, you're quite likely in many states to face a lawsuit brought by the person you shot or the family of the person you shot if the person you shot didn't survive. We've seen that over and over again. And certainly in states where it's highly political, You're going to see things happen to gun owners like's happening to Kyle Rittenhouse right now, or the McCluskys, I can never get that right, in St. Louis, when they really didn't do anything illegal at all, but they're being prosecuted because of politics. So once you actually involve a firearm in a self-defense situation, you've got to have some financial backing to defend yourself in court. If you're well-heeled and you've got tons of money and you don't care, well, that's a whole different proposition. But most of us don't have that. I don't have that. And so I look to companies like Second Call Defense and CCW Safe to make sure that I've got coverage for that. And I have two companies to do that because I follow the military mantra that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So knowing that Plan A can fail, I always want to have a Plan B. So my Plan A, well, first of all, my Plan A is not to get in that situation in the first place, but sometimes it finds you whether you like it or not. And we've seen that over and over again in this goofy year of 2020. But Plan A then with coverage would be, for me, is CCW Safe. The incredible coverage that they have, the incredible service that they offer, incredible. In fact, when I researched them, CCW Safe was by far the best, period. And so my Plan A is CCW Safe. My Plan B is then Second Call Defense. And the reason why I use Second Call Defense is I like certain aspects of their service, but I also just really like the people in the company. I've spoken to them a lot. I've been on the phone with the owner and the founder a lot. And I've discovered they're really a great company, and I like them. And both of those companies have a track record of getting behind people who are their members and defending them. In fact, as far as I know, CCW Safe is the only one that has a history of actually defending somebody against a first-degree murder charge and winning. So I would investigate CCW Safe and Second Call Defense for your coverage. Now, if you're going to do that, I do ask you to do this. They do support GunGuyTV. We have what's called an affiliate relationship with them. So if you're going to sign up with either one, I would really appreciate it if you'd go to our website at GunGuy.tv and look at the banner ad. It's on the right, so if you scroll down on the website, you'll find them. That'll take you to their website through our affiliate link. So when you sign up, we actually get a little marketing fee because we support them and then they support us. So check them out, CCW Safe and Second Call Defense. You'll find them on the GunGuy.tv website.
This podcast needs your help. Send your entire wallet to The Gun Guy, 1313 Mockingbird Lane, Transylvania.
All right, let's get back to what I was talking about before, which is what the media is doing and how people vote. I went over what happens when people vote, that they vote, and then the Electoral College takes over from there, and they submit their electoral votes based upon how people voted in each state. And in this way, these folks get a voice because, like I said, if you're in a state without a big population, you wouldn't have a voice, really, if it was simply an issue of popular vote. As a microcosm of that, you look at me, and if you think about counties like you would states, I live in Southern California, so I live in San Diego County. Well, even though the city that I live closest to and the area where I live closest is very conservative, we get overwhelmed by the big population of California, which is very lefty liberal. So when it comes to presidential politics, our votes mean absolutely nothing. I vote, my family votes, but I have not voted for a president in the state of California and had that president actually carry California in my lifetime, and I'm in my 60s. Unless Reagan carried California, I don't remember. I don't think he did. But if he did, that's the one time. That's it. Every other time, my vote has been drowned out by the lefty liberals in the state of California. Well, now take that and realize that that's because of the popular vote in California. And then the electors from California elect the president. If you do away with the electors, just imagine that popular vote field across the country. And that's what would happen to you. No matter where you are, you're going to get drowned out by California and New York and these states with huge populations that vote very left-leaning and very socialist. So that's what we want to avoid. All right, going back to what I was talking about, though, is once that vote happens, if for some reason there's some problem with the vote, either it's a razor-thin result, which is what happened in Florida in 2000, or there's some suspicion about sketchy ballots or maybe fraud or whatever, what you're going to see is you see recounts and lawsuits. Initially, that's what you see. And in Florida in 2000, they had a bunch of recounts. In fact, you may remember, if you were around, the whole issue over the hanging chads, because back then you took a little pointer and you poked out the hole for the person that you wanted to vote for. There was a little, like an old IBM reader card from when I was in school. I know I'm old. Okay. But that was the hanging chad deal, went on for a while. So you have recounts, and then you'll also have lawsuits. So what you're seeing right now is President Trump requesting recounts and filing lawsuits. There are lawsuits supposedly going to be filed today. There were lawsuits filed the other day. And the Supreme Court has already gotten involved in the state of Pennsylvania. And you can read more about that. I'll find it and put a link in the description for you, and you can see what's happening with that so far. But the United States Supreme Court has already issued an order to the state of Pennsylvania with regard to the vote to separate any votes that were cast after the closing of the polls. So if they were cast after 8 p.m., they have to be counted separately because the law in that state forbids that. And the Supreme Court wants to look at that. I have a sneaking suspicion that all of those middle-of-the-night votes that went for Biden are going to be removed because they're unlawful. So this is the stuff that happens, lawsuits, recounts, and so on. Now, if that doesn't resolve it, it can go to Congress. And these are all legal remedies to resolve a conflict within a presidential election. So the legal remedies are there. What Trump is doing is not illegal, and it's not wrong. It's not immoral. It's not unethical. He has seen some irregularities, and a lot of them actually, throughout different states. And so he's requesting recounts and filing lawsuits, and that's exactly what he should do. If the role was reversed and people were declaring Trump the winner, and the Biden team saw these same irregularities, I would expect that they would file lawsuits and ask for recounts. That's precisely what they should do. And at the end of the day, the idea is to have every legal vote counted and every illegal vote or fraudulent vote removed. And then once you count them up and you've sorted them out, then whoever wins, wins. And that's how that works. So it's a fairly straightforward process, but it does take a lot of time. For example, in the year 2000, Al Gore did not concede the election until December 13th. No, I did not say November. I said December 13th. In other words, the recount went on for a month and a half almost. The whole thing went on for a long time, and that's okay. At the end of the day, the United States Supreme Court in Bush versus Gore, again, we get to recounts and lawsuits, right? This was a lawsuit, Bush versus Gore, went to the Supreme Court. And at that point, the Supreme Court put a stop to the counts, even though the Florida Supreme Court had ordered them to continue. And once they did that, once the Supreme Court put a stop to the recounts on December 12th, Al Gore, who stated on the 13th that he didn't agree with the court's decision, but that he would abide by it, and he stepped out of the race and conceded the election to George Bush. Well, that's how it's supposed to work. There are legal remedies, and once those remedies are exhausted, whoever wins, wins, and whoever loses, loses. So in this instance, Donald Trump is not doing anything he shouldn't be doing. He's doing precisely what he should be doing. He is seeing irregularities, and he's using the legal process to exhaust every legal remedy available to him to see if he can prove that either he won or Biden won without all the risk of fraud and illegal votes and those kind of things, which are apparent at this point. That is fairly widespread. So when the media steps forward and says, in spite of the fact that there is a legal process in our Constitution, set by our laws, established by our founders, that doesn't matter. What matters is the media has decided who's going to be president, then the media has become the enemy of the people and the enemy of the United States. They want what they want. They think they're powerful enough to do it. Well, I'm here to say they're not. Today, there was a story in the news. I think it's in Breitbart News, and we're going to talk about alternative places to actually get news here in just a minute. But in Breitbart, there's a story that says Trump campaign seeks public records in Clark County, Nevada as part of election challenge. You know that story does not appear anywhere that I could find in mainstream media. Nothing about Trump's challenge to these things appears in mainstream media that I could find. Not on Fox, not on CNBC, NBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, none of them. Now, if you find it, let me know, but I could not find it this morning when I was looking. And so as a result, President Trump is having to go back to the way he's gotten the news out in the past. Twitter has been absolutely banning many of his tweets. They've been censoring them by erasing them entirely and putting up a little notice that this tweet was taken down because it violates their policy against fake news. Well, it's not fake news. I've seen tweets that have come out and they've said essentially that he's announcing a lawsuit on Monday, and then that tweet will go away because that's fake news. Well, it's not fake news. It's Monday. Guess what? By the end of the day, there's going to be lawsuits in Pennsylvania and a few other places because that's actual news. But they don't want to talk about it. And so as a result, Team Trump is doing what they need to do that. There's a story in Breitbart today that says Team Trump plans campaign rallies to contest election results. President Donald Trump's presidential campaign plans a series of campaign rallies to boost attention to his legal challenge of the 2020 election. Now, why would he need to boost attention to it if the news was covering it? He wouldn't, because everybody would know. But right now we have a concerted effort by the mainstream media, and I'm going to call them the Marxist media because that's what they are, the mainstream media, to keep you, the American citizen, to keep you, the voter, from knowing what's happening with the election and to convince you that Joe Biden is the president-elect. Now, let me pause right here and just say that Joe Biden may be the president-elect. I don't know, and he doesn't either, and neither does the media. And you know what? Donald Trump may be continuing as president for another 4 years. I don't know. And he doesn't either, and neither does the media. And until the process is completed, nobody will know. So we have to get through the process. And as I said, it doesn't necessarily happen quickly. I know we live in the instant generation. We used to call it the microwave generation. I guess now we call it the Twitter generation, where everybody wants to know right now what the answer is, and nobody has any patience. But unfortunately, the wheels of justice often move slowly. So we have to be patient. And if you voted for Trump, support him. Support him. I voted for Trump. And so what am I doing? I'm part of the alternative media. Admittedly, I'm a very small part, but nevertheless, I'm part of the alternative media. So I'm making sure people are aware of the fact that there is a fight going on over this election because of irregularities and obvious examples of fraud in the voting process. And because this is obviously being twisted and bent by the media to go the direction that they want. Well, the media does not get to do that. The media and the members of the media are like every other citizen in the United States. Each one of them gets one vote, and that's it. And they don't get to twist the election into what they want. So hang in there and stay with it. People are upset about this. I get it. But what you're seeing now is the pro-Trump folks are having little rallies, and they're starting to come out and do things to support the president. I urge you to do that. So if you live in a city where you guys have had, maybe you've gone out and you've had a boat rally or something, do it again. Or maybe you've had, I don't know, some sort of a caravan with cars or whatever with Trump signs, do it again. Get out there and do it again. Let the president see that you support what he's doing in fighting the fight to see who actually won. Because I'm just going to venture a personal opinion here. I think Biden did not win. I think Trump won, and I think they pulled shenanigans and cheated in order to dump a bunch of votes in there at the last minute to get Biden over the hump. And if that's the case, then Trump is our president. Now, at the same time, if it's proven after you get through all of this process and all the illegal votes and fraudulent votes are thrown out and only the legal ones are counted, if it's proven that Joe Biden was elected president, then Joe Biden is the president of the United States. And I'll respect that. But I want to know, as a U.S. citizen, I want to know that the security and sanctity of our elections are protected. And right now, I don't know that. And personally, I don't trust the media, and I don't trust that the vote has been counted accurately. And until it has been, I don't believe it. So I'm going to act on it as I am by getting the news out as best I can. Now, I do want to mention to you real quick, because I'm super duper long, there's other ways that you can help support GunGuyTV. One of those ways, which is the easiest, is to use Amazon use our Amazon link when you're shopping Amazon. Amazon is by far unfriendly to guns. I get it. I totally do. But no matter how many times I've said in the past, you might want to stop shopping at Amazon. Everybody does, and I catch myself doing it. Okay, so people shop at Amazon because it's convenient. I get it. I understand. All right, so I'm not going to take issue with that. What I am going to say is if you want to, you can pick Amazon's pocket for some money and help out GunGuyTV by using our Amazon link. The easiest way to do it is go to our website at GunGuy.tv and click on the banner on the top. There's a rectangular banner on the top that says Amazon or Shop with Amazon or whatever. If you click on that, it will take you to Amazon's page, actual Amazon website, but it'll do it through our Amazon affiliate link. And then once you're on that Amazon page, after you've clicked on that banner, bookmark that page. And whenever you shop Amazon, go back to that bookmark, and that way anything you buy on Amazon at that time will get credit for. It doesn't cost you a dime. It's the same. So your Amazon Prime works. Everything works exactly the same. It's just that Amazon pays us a marketing fee. So please help out GunGuyTV. Use our Amazon link.
Saving the Second Amendment, one episode at a time. This is the GunGuyTV podcast.
Now, I do want you to hang in there through this entire process, but one thing you should understand is that in 2000, a Supreme Court decision which effectively ended the recount and handed the victory to Bush was seen as a very controversial thing by the Gore people. Now, Gore conceded, but they never seemed to accept the legitimacy of Bush's victory. I think the same thing is happening here. In fact, I think the media's efforts are because they know that Joe Biden didn't win, or they strongly suspect it. So they hope that by doing what they're doing, they'll force Trump to stop fighting, or they'll force Republicans to abandon him, or they'll force Americans to abandon him so that they can install Biden into a presidency he did not win. Now, as a plan B for them, if that doesn't work out, if Trump won't give up, if Trump keeps fighting, and we know Trump's a fighter because we wouldn't have 400 and some odd miles of wall at the southern border if he wasn't. If Trump keeps on fighting and it ends up being settled and they find out that Trump won, then they will use all this media and all this stuff they're doing to spend the next 4 years claiming that Trump is an illegitimate president who stole the presidency. I think that's their goal. And since I think that's their goal, I'm going to keep beating this drum, and hopefully you will help me. So I do ask you also, share the podcast, share the video if it's on a video, share it with friends, send them a link from iHeart or Stitcher or whatever, so that they actually get the news too. And I will put in the links in the description a list of some websites you might look at if you want to actually get the news. But first and foremost, I would say Newsmax is a good one. One American News is another good one. Breitbart is another good one. And then for social media, look at Parler. It's not nearly as robust as Twitter is, but you're seeing more and more people move that direction because Parler is not censoring, and they started it for the sole reason to not censor. Because it's not as established or as fully built out as Twitter or Facebook, it is a little clunky. It's what Twitter and Facebook used to be. Very clunky, but nevertheless, it's there. And so we are at GunGuyTV. I am posting on Parler, but I'm not posting quite as much because I can't schedule them. I'm just posting the things that are key. We will post links to every video and that we put up here. So if you want to just subscribe to that system, then even if YouTube goes away and we're still producing videos, I'm always going to post a link to the video and where it is on Parler for you. Okay? So there you are. Well, anyway, hopefully that covers a little bit of the election. I'm not an analyst. I can't do the political analyst stuff for you, but I can tell you that it ain't over till it's over, and it isn't over. Trump is still fighting. Look at these alternative places, and you'll find out what he's doing, and you'll find some truth in the news, which you're not going to get from Fox News or any of the other mainstream outlets, unfortunately. So you got to go look elsewhere to get the actual news. And like I said, Newsmax, One American News, Breitbart, they're all going to have things on there that you don't see anywhere else. So I would check those out as well. Well, I have gone long. I apologize for that. I'm going to get started with the second part of the podcast. So if you're listening on your favorite podcast player, I do thank you very much for listening and consuming the podcast, whether it's on iHeart or YouTube or whatever. And I do encourage you to get the rest of the podcast on Patreon. You just have to sign up, and you can check it out at the link in the description, or you can go to our website at GunGuyTV and click on the big banner that says Patreon. All right, so we're going to head over to the Patreon folks and finish up the second half of the podcast. If you're listening on your favorite podcast player, thank you very much for all of your attention, for all of your support, and wherever you go, whatever you do, please be safe.
You've been listening to the GunGuy TV podcast.